Hi Daniel, how are you?
I'm okay. And
Hi,
you?
thanks for coming today. I would like to thank you that you came here. You are a person who is very, let's say, helpful in the Clojure world, Clojure community, also in the scientific community. Would you mind to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I always like talking with you. And so really thank you. Uh, I'm Daniel. I'm a community organizer in the Cyclodge group. Cyclodge is a group that uh, creates a platform for data science in the Clojure programming language.
That's great. That's really great. I have seen that you have been involved in this for a couple of years already, but let's go even more to the past. And I know that you hold two degrees into completely different fields. One is in mathematics, and the second is sociology. Let's start with mathematics. What is? Are you still interested in it? What fields are interesting for you? How did you decide to? How did you decide to study in mathematics?
Yeah. Yeah, I never know why did it happen, right? I mean, something about it years ago used to be kind of attractive to me. This way of thinking and the questions being asked, and this idea that things can be made abstract.
Yeah,
And so uh, at that time, it was becoming the comfort zone for me as I was back then as a young person. And yeah, and when I started actually studying math, uh, it became a way of thinking.
yes,
So now it is not something that one would just leave.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not involved in academic activity anymore, but it is my way of thinking.
Hmm.
And mostly probability theory. I mean, at least that is one of those paradigms that did influence me a lot and kind of make me
Hmm.
interested.
Okay, okay. Um, And you have finished the degree and then you started immediately also studying sociology, or were there any gap?
Oh, that's yeah,
And what led you to study sociology?
yeah, yeah. I guess at that time I wasn't so young anymore, but still, in a way, naive.
Yeah,
And you see, I was kind of wondering about what way could one connect to society?
yeah,
Because doing math all the time and being kind of in this abstract way of thinking felt like I was a bit disconnected from society, from
hmm,
people in and also so I began recognizing that
yeah,
society was something which was very troubled,
yeah,
which was broken and fragile in many ways, but I didn't know how to think about it. And so my naive way back then was to go study. That's what happened.
yeah,
So I went studying, and I thought sociology would be a way to act in the world naively.
yeah.
So why I went there.
It,
And
it is interesting. Yeah, my aunt, she is PhD in sociology.
oh,
I also did a course of sociology in university. There is a thing I really like about sociology is that they read philosophers a lot,
yeah,
but at the same time, as you are trying to describe the world, how people behave, why do they behave, and so on, there is certain amount of statistics. My aunt, she told me that she started studying sociology because she hated maths, and then she ended up working as a statistician after she got her PhD, and she worked in this field until her retirement. But so I would say sociologists sometimes end up more philosophical. Sometimes they end up more, let's say, as mathematicians or statisticians. What was your focus there?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it took some time to realize, but the most important thing to be found in, in the sociology department, at least at the time and place where I was that there were actually a few students which were very clear and bright in terms of critical thinking.
Hmm.
They were social activists.
Yes.
And being there for me was an opportunity to join them in
Yes.
social action. And I think that's the important thing that happened there in my perspective. And then, at some point I realized, yeah, maybe whatever we were learning was enlightening, learning about, the trouble of society with some concepts like class and gender and things
Um,
that, one may see in the world.
yes.
And, but then, eventually the academic language wasn't so fitting as a way of actually acting
Yeah.
as a social activist. And I think that is why I mostly kept being on the community side and not so much on the academic side of this.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was studying a lot and reading, and it was so enlightening in many ways.
Yeah. So I would say in sociology, yeah, it's interesting mixture. Yeah. When I was doing it, my thesis or my essay was on Zygmunt Bauman and
Oh,
postmodernism,
oh,
and um, it was very interesting, but actually, it's not practical to do any change in the society at all. it's it's more about, um, let's say, explaining what's happening, and there are so many philosophers, and not only philosophers, sociologists who are trying to explain and describe the world and use their own terminology. But when you want to achieve change, sometimes you don't need a lot of theory. You need a lot of energy to achieve change. And very often, I would say change is achieved by a small group of very clever people who know what to do with a bunch of people who might not be that clever, but who have a lot of energy and willingness to support the change. Um, and in this, sociology studies might be less useful than, for example, knowledge of how to speak, how to discuss, how to convince, basically how to sell your ideas. And maybe uh, people who study politics and political science might be closer to this. Hard to say. It's very hard to say. Anyway, you have spent a lot of time, or a lot of time, you have spent some time in academia, and
yeah,
then,
yeah.
yeah,
Maybe should we come back to this?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, stay longer with this because I think it is kind of related to what we are trying to do in the open source
Hmm.
nowadays. And yeah, I think, yeah, in a way, we needed something slightly different than the academic language as social activists. Yeah, and it was very much about the language.
Hmm.
We needed to find words and a way of speaking that would actually create dialogue in different places, in different, different social circumstances. And and actually, at least where I was involved, different communities around different social struggles, I think there was lots of wisdom around, local wisdom of many different kinds,
Yes.
and connecting to that was actually maybe the main question: how one could, be part of some very local, very specific group acting on a very specific topic and connect to their way of speaking about it. So dialogue was the main thing.
Yes.
I'm kind of spending time with it because I think that's kind of essential for our open source community, which is maybe one main topic for today.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I would say open source it has transformed the world of software immensely. When you look at Microsoft in the 90s and Microsoft now, it's a completely different company. And if Linux never happened and GNU never happened, and if it was just Apple and Microsoft, the world of development would be much worse and way more, let's say, hostile towards rights of users. It wouldn't be so open, which is connected to one question actually I have to you today. In scientific, let's say, computing, there are plenty of those like older softwares like MATLAB, Maple, Mathematica, which have plenty of features, have been in use for decades, and then there is plenty of applications under Clojure umbrella. There is R language, there is Python. There are things in Observable HQ if you follow them, and it seems to me they do a lot of open source as well. What do you think about those older solutions like MATLAB, Maple? Do they still have place in the world? What will happen with them?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I got to use a little bit of each and mostly learn from others who have been using them more, like you, I imagine, with Mathematica.
Yeah, I worked with Mathematica.
And I guess uh, I don't know well enough the business situation of any of these
Yeah.
projects, and I don't have this kind of perspective. Um, and I think we have a connection problem, maybe. Sorry for
Now I
that.
can hear you well. I can hear
Yeah,
everything all the time.
yeah, great. Yeah, so I cannot add much about the product or business aspect of these platforms. I can relate to
Mm,
their statement saying, yeah, I might avoid using something that I cannot use at home, only at
yeah.
work, just because I'm not part of an organization which can pay. And also, I can relate to this sentiment saying, yeah, I want something which is live in the way where people can create more
Yes.
extensions and not be blocked by any organizational constraints.
Yes.
I think uh, certainly around MATLAB, there is actually a community of open source creation of many
Yes.
uh,
Around
more,
Octave, right?
and yeah, which is might not be obvious to somebody who is not part of this community. And I remember my mistake, looking into this as something which is closed source, and then a MATLAB expert told me, "Oh no, not exactly. There
Yeah.
is a open source community around that." And still, I think there are so many benefits to actually being able to dive into the lower layers of everything, at least from
Yes.
our perspective as a group which is trying to build a platform that acts on all layers of computation. And so, from our preference, very often we will try to build things on open source foundations, also because we want our users to be free to
Yes.
use these things in any circumstance. And still, the closure approach is to connect to
Yes.
external systems. And at least in case of Mathematica or the Wolfram language,
Yes.
it has this amazing
Yeah.
knowledge base, which is, so valuable, as you know. And so we should be thankful that there is a project for connecting Clojure to Mathematica, to Wolfram language,
Yeah.
Wolframite, and which deserves a conversation of its own.
Yes.
And, and so I think we should say yes to connecting to these systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. One thing is, if we speak about Mathematica, on one side, Stephen Wolfram is extreme genius.
Mhm.
Like, I would say one of the most intelligent people living. And when I watch his presentations, it's great what he can achieve in just a few minutes, where he just mixes like in Mathematica, he is using uh, borders of countries, and he takes them as data points and transform them, and it's great how powerful it is. And at the same time, Mathematica seems to me that it's trying to be quite walled garden, while in comparison, when you use open source scientific solutions, they are very open. Everything is file. You can easily share everything. You can choose your editor, and you can you can do anything you want. You can easily copy paste and so on. While when you are in Mathematica, the format is also the IDE is a little bit clunky. I would say sometimes it just breaks. I was running into bugs, but and also it's closed. You just can't choose an editor. You can't say, okay, I will implement this in Emacs. You just have Mathematica and you have to use it. So it is extremely powerful, but at the same time, you are either in the ecosystem or you are out. While when you are in the world of open source, you can easily send data from one system to another system and send them back. And nobody sees that as a bad thing. It's a good thing, and it's part of the Unix paradigm, right? Tools should do one small thing and do it well, and then you compose things together. Um, let's get back. So after you did or you have spent time in academia, you went more to the, let's say, public and private sector. Um, why did you move out from academia?
Yeah, I think it was mostly about being dedicated to other kinds of activity. And, I've been involved in a few startups, and that
Mhm.
is intense. And at some point, I realized, yeah, I should be able to dedicate my attention
Hmm.
elsewhere just to be able to do that. And it wasn't, I think, never a decision to not come back to academia, and
Yeah.
certainly not leave the math books, but actually not try to be involved in this kind of career, which is demanding in itself.
Yes.
So, so yeah, it just being elsewhere, being dedicated to another project, and just as well for social activism and community organization, that is something that requires this kind of dedication of
Yes.
act, lots of attention and thinking. I was just feeling I was required elsewhere.
Great. And do you still keep updated on new development in your fields?
Yeah, so I think not as much as it was, and there is this special way of being connected to a certain field in math or science or another topic where you actually read everything and keep following all the new papers people are publishing. And at least in those fields I was active, it was actually possible back then, and valuable to be
Yes.
able to know whether any question has been asked and answered already. I think in certain fields nowadays it is already overwhelming and not so
Yes.
practical to actually have a decent picture. And also, to be honest, my dedication nowadays is to people and community and the software libraries we are creating, and I'm not able to read math
Sure.
which I
Sure.
could. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't probably keep up with the frontier of everything that's being researched and everything that's interesting for you. But still, if you like it, maybe you read about it. What things do you see as exciting topics nowadays?
Yeah. So I think Bayesian statistics and
Hmm.
probabilistic programming that we have been chatting about, and that I think you have some interest in it, as far as I understand. It, it is something we should talk about more. And this is not new, but these days there are some nice, there is some nice progress
Hmm.
around Bayesian statistics, which is partially around computing. Being able to compute using more or less the same computational platforms one would use for deep learning,
Yes.
but just in a different way,
Yes.
optimized for different targets and so on. But it is also about ergonomics
Yeah.
and workflow and community. And all these beautiful things are happening in a few of the Bayesian statistics communities, which are sometimes around a piece of software like Stan or PyMC,
Yes.
but also around methods like different flavors of Markov chain Monte Carlo and so on,
Yeah.
are kind of directed to a certain type of problems. So you may find those beautiful groups of people collaborate on different fields
So,
now. And
so
that is something worth following, just because it allows us to reason about our problems. You actually be able to handle uncertainty in a way which is
yes.
not completely invisible. Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to get to probabilistic programming, Bayesian statistic, Bayesian modeling, how to do it? What resources do you recommend, or how to start?
Oh, yeah. So since we are a small community, uh, and I mean, sorry, probably there are hundreds of people listening to your podcast, but maybe a bunch of them might be interested. So let us just talk. We are planning a study group. We have been running a few study groups
Mhm.
around Asian statistics, and and I think it is something um, that we can learn together and is one of our goals at the Cyprus community. There are a few good books, and maybe I can send some links afterwards.
Yes, please.
Oh, I have it. Yeah. Is it here? Oh, can't find the book.
Never mind.
Never mind. Yeah, but I think yeah, I would suggest yeah, just let us talk and let us
Yes.
study together. Certainly for this community where we have some ideas in common. And sorry, I assume you have thousands of listeners to this podcast. It was kind of too little to assume hundreds, right? I imagine.
Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Usually the videos are seen. I think it will go to hundreds. Over time, it will get to thousands,
Oh
most
yeah,
likely.
that
So
isn't common.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
now, why should get one to probabilistic programming and Bayesian statistics?
Yeah. Do you mean what? Are you
Why?
asking
Not how, but now why?
why? Why? Yeah, I think it is a way of reasoning which is very pragmatic
Hmm.
and offers this kind of simplicity because the foundations, the basic idea is actually not a big idea. It is just probability theory, which
Yeah.
is just a tiny set of axioms. And everything else is just built on top of that. So a problem can be complicated, but our description of our model of a problem can be simple.
Yes.
And it can be simple in a very general way that can actually address many aspects of our problem. And that is what Bayesian statistics is offering, I think, this kind of simplicity through making things very visible.
Yeah.
We are not hiding the details or making something implicit. We are actually making an explicit
Mhm.
story where anything which is unknown is just a random variable, a random, uncertain. quantity. And we can reason about the relationships of all pieces of this story. So this is no longer an abstract idea. It is something people can compute with
Hmm.
efficiently. And that does like make a difference.
Yes.
So yeah, it allows you to model while thinking very transparently about your problems.
Okay, okay. And I suppose it's useful in all fields, no matter if it's epidemiology, uh,
Yeah,
security,
yeah.
business, any other field, I guess. So,
Very general idea. Yeah. I would recommend people watch the talk by Sami Kallinen in Heart of Closure. It was a perfect intro to why and how of
okay.
this.
If
Yeah.
you will send me a link, I will add it to the description of the video so people can watch it as well. Now, if we will speak about Clojure and probabilistic programming, what's the situation as of now?
Right. Yeah. So as we know, Clojure has this approach of connecting to other ecosystems, other runtimes, and even though Clojure has been a language for research and implementation for probabilistic programming systems, and also even though we have some really nice Clojure libraries for probabilistic programming, it is not as complete as what we have in PyMC and Stan and a few other computing systems. So we should certainly reach out to other systems and connect to them.
Yes.
And so while we'll keep working on the closure libraries like Infermi, which is this probabilistic inference libraries, which is so interesting, we'll keep working on them, but we will also use mostly Stan and PyMC because they have these great communities and great ecosystem around them. So there is a great bridge. There is a decent bridge for Stan that we are using, and you can see that in action in Sami's talk recently. And we can also use PyMC. We have been doing that through Clojure. And 1 year ago, there was a talk at the Clojure Conch by Blaine Moores about a project using PyMC from Clojure. It was working really great.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's the recommended approach at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. Speaking of this, let's say connecting things, it might be inherent to the fact that Clojure is built on top of JVM,
Yeah,
and its success, when we look at other Lisps like Common Lisp, Scheme, not being hosted on JVM has its advantages, but the main disadvantage is that the ecosystem is lacking. You just don't have that many libraries. While in Clojure, it might be ugly, but you have library in Java for practically anything, and you might wrap it. Then there is the project CLG Python that is really good, really fast, that adds interoperability with Python. On it's really high quality, I would say, as if Clojure had two platforms to run on, even when it's not the case. So, so yes, in this case, Clojure definitely is like this. And how did you get to Clojure?
yeah. Maybe I'll add one more comment about this, if that is okay. I think, yes, in terms of computing, certain scientific computing practices, yeah, Clojure is, as you explained, not limited to the JVM, and we could we could compute a lot in a very direct Clojure way, but this will not be enough. We should connect to ecosystems and
Yes,
communities, and for these fields, it matters because you need those ways to visualize and diagnose and learn from others and share and collaborate. So it really makes sense to connect to other beautiful scientific communities like the one of PyMC and STEM. Yeah, yeah,
yes, absolutely. So let's get back to how did
yeah,
you get to Clojure?
yeah. I was involved in mostly early stage startups back then,
Hmm.
and it was 12 years ago, and there was lots of Java and
Yeah.
so R for statistical computing. And I gradually learned to appreciate, software ergonomics. Functional programming was just an idea I was beginning to hear about, and something was missing in
Yes.
terms of a very uh, uh, dynamic experience of being able to explore everything,
Yes.
compose everything easily, but also in a way that is efficient and connected to our JVM backend, which happened to be Java back then. And a friend did tell me about Clojure, and then I think I learned to appreciate it. And even though I was programming in C and Java and Maple and R and many other
Yeah.
things, it was the first time I could feel like a programmer, like being actually feel confident that anything can be done. And it was this simplicity and composability in a
Hmm.
playful way that was making it clear for me for the first time.
Would you mind to say what were those startups about?
Uh, One was about recommendation systems, and then another one about finance. And the latest one, where I was spending 8 years of my life, was uh, called Localize. It was about um, real estate, finding a home to buy or rent. And then we had to do a lot with different data problems, very
Hmm.
much geography, looking into streets and neighborhoods and buildings and cities and all that.
Uh-huh.
So
And
data,
building models on top of that, I suppose,
yeah, yeah,
making predictions. So it's
yeah.
it's using science for good, isn't it?
It was real estate.
Yes.
Hopefully, some people did find it helpful. I think in a certain local markets, it did matter a lot to make the whole market visible and transparent to the public so
Yes.
that people will be able to reason about their decisions. And this has been uh, transformative for certain markets, I think, where we did have users. And I think the company still, maybe not dive into the state of the company, which is good and bad in different parts. Uh, but yeah, I think it is a good example for making data accessible and creating data-driven products
Hmm.
that can be transformative for the public, for usability.
All right. That's great. That's great. And then you moved to start Cyclosh community, right?
I think it was happening in parallel, but yeah,
Oh,
but nowadays I'm focusing on Cycloge and I'm not working there anymore.
anymore or not thinking. Okay, okay. I guess most people who will be watching this have heard about Cyclosh, but if there are any, um, would you mind to introduce what is Cyclosh about? What is it trying to achieve?
Yeah, yeah, it is a group
Hmm.
which is creating a set of tools and libraries for data science and scientific computing in Clojure. It means that we are trying to do something which uh, might not grow as we hope. Our hope is to let it grow, to make it something which is popular,
Yes.
since we recognize that it matters to have many users and use cases and cultures and fields of study when you're building a scientific platform. And that's what we are looking to create. And it is a difficult problem because that's not the way the mainstream works at the moment. And still, what we are creating, I think, is very much useful to the broad Clojure community because we are creating libraries and tools for high performance computing and data processing and data visualization, and not only math, statistics, and machine learning.
Okay. Okay. What's the
Yeah, and
current
maybe
progress
yeah,
inside?
and another thing we should say, sorry,
Yeah. Go
uh,
ahead. Go ahead.
Cycloge is a community project. we have been running study groups. We have been mentoring people in the way to get involved in open source. And a lot of our activity is around that because we recognize that building this platform is also a social problem.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, of course. And also, just building the product would not be enough
Right.
because if you go to study in university and if they teach you MATLAB or Python or both, but they will not tell you about Clojure at all, you might not know that it exists, or you might know it exists, but you might not know how to use it. And if
Oh,
there is nobody to help, you will use what you already know, right? So, what's the current progress in Cycloge? What was happening in the community as of now?
yeah. Yeah. So I think a few of the libraries have been maturing and are still actively developed. And maybe one of the new things worth mentioning is Wolframite, this bridge to Wolfram language, which got some recent attention, and also a new library for uh, grammar of graphics data visualization that we call table plot. That's
Mhm.
another which is kind of new. But all the main libraries are still active, and tablecloth and fast math are growing. Fast math is a great library for math and statistics, and it is just uh, getting to version 3, which is
Mhm.
a big chain,
Yes.
and a lot of our attention as a community is supporting that and documenting that. And now there is also this project we call the Clojure, or Nodge in short. So Nodge is kind of one entry point that has a few of the libraries as dependencies with lots of documentation and integration tests. So we are building these things together and testing them together, and that matters a lot. So if anybody
Mhm.
is to just see you where to begin, then Nodge is supposed to be the entry point.
Mhm.
And that's under active development. Yeah, and maybe another thing which is happening is this open source program where Cycloge is mentoring Clojure developers who are looking to get involved in open source. And I think 57 people have reached out to this program in the
Wow,
last. Yeah,
it's
yeah, and some.
good.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And some of them did have to drop out, and there is lots of uncertainty. People's journeys are changing with many aspects of life. And
Yes. Yes.
I think it is like 30 people, like one half or something like that, which are active at the moment. And we meet regularly and work on different projects. And for a few people, I think they have actually become involved and have made contributions. And I think that's one of the main efforts nowadays.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What libraries in Cycloge are the most successful ones, either in the terms of use or maturity?
Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I think one thing worth mentioning is D-type Next and TechML dataset, which are by the Tech Ascent group,
Mhm.
uh, is like a private company, but the members have been involved in Cycloge from the very beginning, and they have created these high performance computing libraries, which are essential for almost everything we do. And then on top of that, you have this friendly layer of tablecloth for table processing. And then there is fast math for math. And for data visualizations, there are a few options like Hanami and table plots nowadays.
Mhm.
And then there is Metamorph, the Metamorph project for machine learning pipelines. That's
Mhm.
another thing. And then there are more things for working with other languages like the bridge to Python and to R and to Wolfram language and
Yes. Yes.
Julia and so on. Yeah, so these are a few of the things I believe are
Great. Great. For somebody who is not a scientist, is there any possibility to contribute to Cycloge? And if yes, how?
Yeah, great. Thank you for this question. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, so yes, what we create is very diverse. We are creating libraries for data processing, data visualization, tooling, and many other things. And people can help in, creating a new library. There is a wish list for few things which are very much accessible and are just about closure, basically. And also, if somebody wants to learn a certain topic in math or statistics or machine learning or data visualization, then it can be a great way to, maybe pick a textbook and convert that to Clojure. And then this way people can learn about the topic they wish to learn about, but also make a contribution, which is actually very important at the moment, because this way we get these integration tests of our libraries by writing a testable document within
Yes,
the book chapter. And and so all of these things I think can be made accessible, and that's our major of effort now with the open source program.
yes.
So the way to begin is to reach out and let us talk. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Any closing?
think a big part of data science, if we will speak, for example, about data science, is actually not the science part, but it's getting the data to the right shape and cleaning them and converting them if you have multiple data sources, and some are using timestamps and others are using date times with time zones, and you need to convert everything to the same shape, which is much closer to, let's say, data integration. And
Yeah.
as Clojure is backend heavy world, I think more Clojure developers are backend developers than frontend or full stack developers. It might be closer for them, and actually, I think one way how to contribute would be to provide, let's say, data connectors or tools how to prepare data, shape them, visualize them, etc. You don't have to be a scientist to do such a thing, right?
Yeah, really, thank you for this. So insightful. So, yes, it is so much about workflow and usability and composability, as you explained. Yes. And yeah, maybe let us say, yeah, actually, in a way, maybe it is the science. Yes, there are some ideas like linear algebra and probability theory and some statistical practices. So there is some knowledge to be had and some ideas,
Hmm.
but then this is not so much actually. All these ideas can be made accessible, and then it is all about composing them and making them
Yes,
useful. So yes, I think it is very much accessible for anybody who has some time. Time is needed, of course, for
yes,
everybody.
yes, sure. Can you tell me more how Cycloge is used in the world as of now?
Yeah. So, as far as I know, uh, most big and medium closure companies don't use Clojure for data science so much, and that's the way the mainstream works. We know that nowadays, using a, a small programming language for something where you have bigger communities is perceived risky. I
Yeah,
can see why. It is perceived risky for hiring people and so on, for building a team, and I think for smaller teams, uh, the main thing that makes sense for a small data science team, in my opinion and experience, is picking the tools that will be convenient for the person doing the research. And it is not very often not about building a long-term code base. It's about creating a few models, researching and pushing something to production that then might be needed to be made compatible with the software system. So then for small teams, for new teams, for startups, I think it should be simpler to pick a language that the data scientist may like. And I think it is not happening a lot. and there are a few companies and individuals who use Clojure. There are a few consulting companies, yeah, maybe I shouldn't put names here,
Yeah,
because then
like
I might.
Flexiana, for example, and yeah, there is Metal Jukes. Yeah.
Yeah, for our friends in Cycloge, I think they have DataSense and Mastodon C are Clojure consulting companies that have been using Clojure for data science for a long time.
Mhm.
And there are a few others. I might be leaving out some others, and then there is also one of our friends is a city planner. Will Cohen is a planner in
Mhm.
Boston and has been using Clojure intensively for complex geographical problems. So there are those specialized stories of an individual using Clojure at work, and um, there is yeah, I think at my project we've been using at my job in the past we've been using Clojure for geography and time series analysis and machine learning and house pricing and so on, and and then there are a few people using it in academia, but not a lot. And
Yes.
it is small. It is a challenge. And yeah, probably I'm leaving out a few good examples now that left my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
But
we are working on the software part of one medical device, which is now in clinical trials, and we are using Clojure as well. So yeah, I can add Flexiana to this as well. Now we are in the data gathering stage, but it will come to the point where we will need to build personalized models for individual patients, and then it will be used. Now, another hard question:
oh yeah,
how to convince universities to teach Clojure?
yeah. So I think this is really hard. And we've been speaking with a few of our friends who are involved in universities. And at the moment, there is this strong preference for Python, of course, as we know. Sometimes they still use R in some places, and that's great. Sometimes they would use Julia in certain places, but mostly, for teaching, for first year courses, as far as I know, it will be very much about Python. And a few of us have been lucky to use Scheme in our studies some time ago because of the SIGPY book that many
Yeah,
universities have been using. And so that might be the answer, that one or two transformative books that will actually bring some clarity to a certain field might use Clojure as a way of teaching. That's a big project to have, and it might not succeed.
yeah,
And I don't know much about the way universities work nowadays. What I do think is that we are having a good process that has only begun happening, and that is actually reaching out to a broader group of people and making Clojure accessible for them in their science, in their research. So growth is something that can be done much better and with much better attention than what we have been doing. And I think that's a step that might need to happen before making it accessible for college.
yeah.
And we may talk more about that.
Yeah, when I studied computer science 20 years ago,
Oh,
they didn't teach us Python at all. They were teaching us MATLAB and Maple.
oh,
And one thing I would say is that Clojure is much better than those in that matter that it's a full language. In
yes,
in Maple or MATLAB, I can't really imagine building something that's larger than just one file or one notebook and
yeah,
importing plenty of libraries, having software architecture, if you will. You,
yeah,
the the software is not prepared to build something that has thousands of lines of code or something that is potentially embedded into other applications with UI or that has some ongoing job and the data keep coming all the time and you react to it. While in Clojure, you get full language with namespaces, testing framework. You can compile it. It will tell you about plenty of errors you might have. So if I compare with those, let's say, closed source solutions, I would definitely prefer Clojure over those in every single scenario where I either expect the thing I do to grow from, let's say, tens or hundreds of lines to thousands, or if there is an expectation that the thing I am building will be embedded to other people's work as a running process or some web application or part of some data pipeline. In Clojure, it's just simple. It's the code. It's a programming language, and you can do it. And if you want to run it on thousands of computers, you don't have to pay for thousands of licenses. And at the same time, even when I'm a big fan of open source, Clojure can be compiled. So potentially, if you want to sell your solution commercially, you can compile it. And it's not like, if you really want, you can read the code, you can read the underlying bytecode, but
Yeah.
it is what you get when you download any closed source application. So in comparison with Python, building a commercial product that's downloaded to people's computers is, from business point of view, is easier. So I would say going also from academia or from research into application in real devices might be better also from business point of view. Now, but what
Yeah,
about,
and
yeah,
began talking about functional programming and composability and Lisp and the rest,
yes,
all that.
yes,
Yeah,
we are not even starting with that. And I must say, in some things, Clojure is so much more expressive than other languages.
yeah,
My first real world Clojure application about 12 years ago have been a CRM and ERP system for one telco company, which it's a small company that installs voice over IP phones in other companies. And I have built a system to manage installation, to manage sales, to manage the whole operations of the company. And I was able to implement the whole thing in 5,000 lines of code only, really to build a system that can manage the whole company, which in Python, Ruby might be easily 10, 15, 20,000 lines of code, in Java even more, which partially might not be Java's problem. It might be because of the culture of design pattern overuse. But I would say that Clojure is extremely expressive language, and people should see it and see it's ideal for any symbolic programming. If anyone will run into a scenario where symbolic programming makes sense. So this is how to convince universities to teach, let's say, Clojure to bachelor degree students. But now, how to convince scientists, PhD students, or postdoc, like people who already do the research, to give Clojure a try.
yeah. I think that's maybe, yeah. So first, I'm convinced, right? You have convinced me, and I think, yeah, I think, convincing one scientist might be easier compared to actually making somebody teach using Clojure,
Yeah.
because there are less constraints and a scientist may pick the best tool for their task, and they may appreciate composability and simplicity and expressivity and all that. And so that is something we have been doing, talking with a scientist who is just curious about Clojure and looking into this as a tool, and this will happen more. I'm
Yes.
we are starting to see that the way the community grows. This is happening.
Yes, yes. Also, I would say the scientific notation seems to be very declarative. And Clojure is also a very declarative language, and it just might be closer to people's thinking. Are there equivalents of basic libraries like NumPy, Pandas
Yeah.
in Clojure?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And even if you don't try to make the exact equivalence because things are structured slightly differently, if you look into Nodge, its main entry point nowadays, then in the list of libraries behind Nodge, you'll see all of that and more.
Great, great. Yeah, there are also things like Next Journal that
Yeah.
look a lot like Jupyter. There is Clojure kernel for Jupyter also. So for people who use Jupyter, they can use Clojure, which is great, and it's a good start if people are already using it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll comment about that briefly.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. So uh, we are creating lots of tutorials nowadays. Really, really many beginnings of tutorials and library documentation and so on. And then there is a question how we create these things. So we happen to use a tool called Clay, which is a Cycloge tool for a notebook experience. But I think the main point is that we need some standardization so
Yes.
that when I write documentation for a certain math library, it will just work in a different tool like this Jupyter kernel. And that is maybe one of the promising projects happening nowadays with Timothy Crackney and a few other friends. This project is called Kindly, and it is a start for representing how things should be visualized in a notebook. And our plan, and we are talking with, for example, with the Jupyter kernel project, our plan is to make existing tools support this standard we call Kindly, and then all the notebooks we are creating now for documentation should just work in
Yes.
Jupyter. So that should happen in the coming year. And
That's
but
great.
the Jupyter kernel is already really great and it has been there for some time. It really is such a wonderful project, yeah.
Great. Great. Thank
And
you very much. Thank you
Next
very
Gen
much.
is amazing, of course, yeah.
What's the website of Cycloge?
The website,
The website.
yeah, it is cycloge.org or
Okay.
.github.io, and yeah, does it work? Yeah,
Yeah.
cycloge.github.io. Yeah.
So I will add the link to the video, and I hope people will start contributing. I
Oh
would
yeah.
like to thank you that you found time to speak with me. It
Oh, it was
was a privilege,
yeah.
and I would love to do some other interview with you in the future
Thanks
to
so much.
see how things evolve. And I would like to wish a lot of luck to you and Cycloge.
Yeah, thanks so much. Such a pleasure meeting you again, and it was really
Likewise, likewise.